Okay, and then this is a shortcut method of remembering your debits and credits. So you'll see in the next topic, we're going to go into a lot of detail about what debits and credits are, and this will help you. And I always tell my students to just write this down on your exam paper somewhere before you start. So as soon as you get your paper, write this down, and I promise you it will help you. It really will. So you'd need to remember AED and CIL. So a lot of people think that debit and credit means increase and decrease. It does not mean increase and decrease at all, right? Debit and credit are Latin words. Debit means left and credit means right. And that is it. Doesn't mean anything more than that, right? So AED, A stands for assets, E for expenses, and D for drawings. Okay, so these all increase on the left-hand side, which is your debit side. So it means if I debit my asset, it means it's increasing. So say bank, right? An example of an asset account is bank. If I debit bank, it means that bank is increasing. So of course, vice versa, if I have to credit bank, it means that bank will be decreasing. So if I received money from someone, maybe rent income, and say 3,000 Rand. So I would debit bank with 3,000 Rand, which means my bank account would increase with 3,000. Okay. And then the same with my expenses. If you debit an expense, it means it's increasing. So if I am paying rent, okay, I would debit rent expense, which means my expense for rent is increasing. Drawings, if the owner has to take 100 Rand from the business, I would debit drawings with 100 Rand, which means my drawings is increasing. Right, so I'm just going to show you. There. This is the same thing. I've just put it into another app, into OneNote. AED, right? Assets, expenses, drawings, increasing on the left. So I want you to look at this T account. We call it a T account, right? It means that here I've used bank, right? See, you'll see that the left-hand side of this T account is my debit side and the right-hand side is my credit side. Because remember I told you in Latin, debit is left and credit is right. So this template is extremely important, right? You need to know what a T account is. We'll go into more detail with this in the next topic. Okay, so for now, I need you to know that assets increase on the debit side. So if I chose, you'll see here, I use bank as an example, right? This is my T account for bank. So if I put anything on the debit side, it means that my bank account is increasing. And if I have to put anything on the credit side, it means it's decreasing. Okay, and then the same expenses. So I told you earlier, a rent expense. So we can, for every single account that we have in our books, we will have a T account. So every single income, every single expense, there will be a T account for it. Right, so if I debit rent expense, it means that my rent expense is increasing, okay? And then I could also say this is my drawings, so say I would change this to drawings because I would have a T account for drawings as well. If I put anything on the debit side, it means my drawings is increasing. So the owner is taking something from the business. Right, so whenever I debit drawings, it means drawings is increasing. Okay, now let's look at CIL. C stands for capital, I for income, and L stands for loans or liabilities. You can see that at the bottom here. I don't know why it didn't come in line with that. Okay, so C for capital. So here, if this increases on the right-hand side, right? So if this were my capital account, capital, it means if I credit capital, I am increasing capital. So if the owner has to put 100,000 into the business, he contributed 100,000 into the business bank account, I would say credit capital, because my capital is increasing by 100,000. And I would say debit bank, because bank would be increasing by 100,000. And remember, bank forms part of this AED, my assets bank, right? So say this for bank. Right, so I would say debit bank because bank would be increasing by 100,000, and I would credit capital because capital would be increasing by 100,000. Okay, and then I stands for income. So if I have to credit an income, it would increase. So rent income, if I were receiving money for rent, I would say debit bank because my bank account would be increasing, and I would say credit rent income. Then L stands for loans or liabilities. So if I borrowed money from a bank, I would say credit my loan, which is a liability, which means my loan account is increasing, right? And of course, vice versa also. So if I want to decrease a liability, then I would debit the liability. So if I were paying 10,000 Rand towards my loan, I would debit my loan and I would credit bank because my bank account would be decreasing, right? So I'm crediting it. And my loan account would also be decreasing because I'm paying money towards the loan, so I owe less money. Okay, so don't stress too much if you didn't understand this whole thing now, because I am going to be doing it again in the next topic to reinforce it. This is very important, right? If you need to watch this another 2 or 3 times, just go back and rewind and watch it again, because it's the foundation of accounting. The accounting equation is the foundation. You need to know what an asset, what an expense, drawings, capital, income, liabilities, and you need to know about the debits and credits, okay? This is very important. If you get this, things will be much easier as we go through the semester.